Chaos Dwarfs, a faction that specializes in fairly complicated jobs and industry. Today in Warhammer 3 we'll be spreading the joys of hard work and free labor. To achieve this, the game offers a variety of factions to choose from, but it's all about who has better racial slurs. Welcome! About 95% of your time will be spent looking at this map. You got your settlement, your army, enemy army, and their disgusting settlement that needs liberating. During the battle phase, you may notice that our army looked like a bunch of overworked Amazon employees. That's why we brought a secret weapon, Texas. After a heated debate and a few war crimes, we managed to win and even take their settlement. After, you can choose what type of city it will be between outpost and factory, which are exclusive to Chaos Dwarves. Additionally, you got your basic resources, such as money and faction-specific resources, which in our case are labor, armament, and influence, which I'll explain later. Outposts produce resources, which power the factories, in turn producing armaments. You can also sack or raise the settlements, but that doesn't bring in the money. I started off by expanding my military infrastructure, as well as increasing my army for all of our future diplomatic incidents and researching new technology, split between military, sorcery, and industry. But I want more cheap shot jokes against Amazon, so obviously, finishing our turn, we get to sit and wait until over 200 factions finish theirs. But don't worry, the week will be pruned, making the process faster with each turn. And we took out the last enemy settlement and immediately started planning our next, let's call them diplomatic incidents, and since I'm a racist, and also because they become too strong later on, I will be attacking the greenskins. It just so happens that the best route of attack is for a completely different faction. As I mentioned, the way our faction works is building up industry, and in order to do that we need slaves. Labor. Besides getting them from battles, another way to do that is to set up convoys at other cities where you can exchange one resource for another. Speaking of, it's a good idea to look around at potential future investment opportunities, like those diamonds over there. But first, we still need to take out the orcs, continuing our advance for yet another faction. At this stage, we're able to use our accumulated influence to get one of the seats that are also segregated into industry, sorcery, and military districts, which grant various additional bonuses. We can also use armaments to upgrade our unit capacity, as well as grant them all kinds of bonuses that will make them perform better or sometimes outright broken, also known as steroids. Remember I mentioned I was a racist? Reason number one. Since we're still at war with another faction, we kind of need to make a choice here. Finish them off or... Never mind. Even though I'm fairly confident, I didn't feel like taking almost 2 full stacks, so I did what any good dwarf would do. Hid behind walls of my cities. That did not stop them, however, as they did not follow or believe in logic. Let me introduce you to an ancient Latin strategy known as Cornelius Campius, which just charges the enemy despite having superior position, and inferior numbers of course. After a long and brutal battle, and lots of friendly fire, we repainted the terrain with carpet of bodies, and after their general was killed, it was only a question of how many POWs we can shoot running away, which unlocked a regiment of renown. Chasing them down and finishing off the stragglers, we sent the rest to labor camps, all 6 of them. At this point, we were clearly winning the war, which made the Skaven who were directly north of us engage in diplomacy. Unfortunately, by the time we were able to regroup, the settlement was already occupied by a different faction, which also just happened to attack our target, clearing the city and letting us just walk in. Following their path of destruction, we just kept occupying ruins until we managed to reach the capital. With the war finished, we had time to expand our buildings, consolidate our troops and resources, finish research, and acquire more bonuses. Our labor force was still pretty small, which meant we had to pick more fights as the convoys were taking way too long. Time to repay the favor. Oh, don't worry, my troops are just passing through. Oh, don't worry, this is just a peaceful intervention to ensure the safety and lives of our future workforce. The downside of this was now we were once again facing 2 armies, which loosened our recruitment requirements. Luckily, I had a hay boner for a different faction and also split up, making it easier for us to take them out and take their cities, which we needed to replenish our strength. Eventually, the AI will start offering you extortion money for you to stop killing them, so obviously, as a sane individual, I got up and sucker punched another faction, further expanding our resource outposts and hoarding better units, which only increases our WCPM, or war crimes per minute. With an angry horde of rampaging Amazon employees, we set an ambush, patiently waiting for someone foolish enough to go for a walk. In an ambush battle, you're allowed to set your army wherever you want, while the enemy is forced to face you out of position. by sending your cheap units while you commence friendly fire. Never bring gun to a chariot fight, and never bring a skyscraper to a machine gun fight. Perfect ambush. We can now set yet another provincial capital, establish supply lines, and kill off any survivors that don't want to work, making the city actually live up to its name. After mopping up the rest of the peasants, we started to look south for more potential prospects, but not before securing a trade and non-aggression pact with the supreme champion of chaos, and also this research, which will grant us 5% casualty replenishment bonus. Oh, a surprise attack from the Skaven? I was so surprised in fact that I had 2 armies ready for intervention, which immediately resulted in them offering extortion money. You know what's better than money? Slavery. After the Battle of Skavenblight, finally our numbers were starting to grow. With their armies gone, it was just a question of turning their cities into iPhone assembly lines. At this point, I felt confident enough to take on the world mission, where you basically have to escort a train through a valley filled with potential future employees. Now normally this wouldn't be a problem, except our legs are way too short to keep up. So you're kind of forced to fight out of position, adopting a well-known Russian tactics of no retreat, barely managing to survive thanks to our superior pathing and guns, which is where the majority of our casualties actually come from. We allied the neighbor Chaos Dwarf faction, who were actually stronger, which will serve both as a buffer zone and our future target of confederation. This allows us to construct outposts in their settlements, provide various bonuses such as local recruitment, establish a trade agreement with the Chaos faction, and to increase our trade value, we decided to procure additional resources, which just happened to be around my ally, turning him into my very own Switzerland. All we have to do now is push through 2 cities, whilst our other armies wait in position against ogre kingdoms on the other side of our empire, procuring a non-aggression pact with the other sizable Dwarven faction, and establishing a trade agreement. After the cities fell, we were in position to attack. It's pretty far, and the only way to get reinforcements there quickly is through portal in enemy territory. Well, I mean my territory. With all these recent conflicts, our labor force was starting to get quite sizable actually, and caused another faction to declare on us, which meant we could now kill indiscriminately. This was turning into quite a bloodbath, where we might have bit off more than we could chew, but our army was free labor, which meant they're expendable. With every battle and city, it seemed like the enemy had endless amount of troops, where even the orcs started to look like dwarves in comparison, starting to feel like a terrain specialist, where the only specialty is how many bodies it will take to repaint the terrain. There was a settlement between me and the enemy army, and I didn't feel like trespassing. The only possible solution was to eliminate them. Furthermore, it was time for our first battle against the Chinese, and it went about as well as you'd expect. Definitely only took me 1 try, but our forces spread so thin we couldn't possibly protect all of the settlements, and we might have suffered a few setbacks, scrambling to attempt some form of resistance. Oh, god damn it. Trying to keep up with the wars, I recruited a new army. The whole southern front looked like a pit of pain and despair, and with additional reinforcements arriving, I wanted to end things quickly, whilst maintaining a defensive position everywhere else. Time has come to absorb our allies. We just needed a bit of influence whilst pushing for victory. Only problem was I had only 1 army in the south against 3 enemy armies. We had to move quickly and managed to take out 1 of them and claim a settlement, with only 2 more armies to show up with some stragglers, which, well, the only way to reinforce them was to blast our way through. Alright, you know what, just add it to the pile at this point. With so many factions declaring war on us, we were in a fight for our lives. Literally. After taking over the majority of ogre kingdoms, I needed to buy some time to regroup, as attacking the remaining faction would be quite costly. So we got some extortion money and got out. Now, I could focus our resources into expanding the quality of our military and industrial might. With peace in the south, I could also focus our troops towards China and garrison our unprotected settlements just in time. Speaking of unprotected settlements, there was still a Dwarven army taking a stroll for our lands. Whilst our allies wanted to join the war against the other Chinese, like we weren't already busy with slowly collapsing. The plan is to let our allies and Chinese duke it out before confederating them and absorbing everything they took, kind of like an agent proxy war, except our allies are doing all the fighting, while we clean up our lands and reclaim lost territory, securing more trade agreements and pacts with the wicked and downtrodden. In the meantime, we confederated our very own Switzerland, which granted us 2 additional full armies at the very low cost of our economy. Now our soldiers will be able to deal sundering strikes, which will take 30 armor away from our enemies. Eventually, we tracked down the enemy lord, which was right outside our city, a narrow passage perfectly suited for long-range artillery. Here's a pro tip: don't charge head-on into flamethrowers. After a few skirmishes and public execution of the enemy lord, we crushed one of many enemy incursions. If we can't take major cities, then we shall just go around taking other settlements. Since our list of enemies was about to grow, we got into a military alliance with the other Chaos Dwarf faction, and we were forced to clear out this filthy elven rabble, which we did by baiting the AI into a wrong neighborhood. With the enemy out of the way, we just walked in and took it. Kept liberating more cities and hunting down dwarven armies, and if we run out of money, we can always just sell our labor for extra cash, which apparently is a tremendous crime? Anyway, pretty soon we had enough influence to confederate one of the Chaos Dwarf factions, making us unbeatable at this stage of the game. What we had left was mopping up the remaining neighboring factions that we were still at war with, and eventually ended up dominating the region. And since nobody can challenge us anymore, we can finally start calling our workforce slaves. Always have been, which we always need more. And more, a little more. Perfect. As soon as the dwarves fell, we kind of lost all the challenge and the region was already free. At this point, fighting and killing has become more of a 9 to 5 than a question of survival, steamrolling every single enemy and army in all directions. With nobody and nothing standing in our way, we effectively spread like wildfire and won the campaign. Everyone was already in the mines.